Hi everyone, my name is Lexi and today I will be sharing with you my top 10 best books of the year. Also, Kayla, if you're watching this, hi. So I did not do that great of a job at tracking my reading stats. I kind of want to try doing it digitally again, whether I'm using Goodreads or Storygraph or some other random platform, but I did try my best to count and I think I read around 60 books in 2023. And out of those 60 plus books, these are the top 10 books that I think you should maybe potentially try reading. Or not, I don't know. Let's go ahead and get started with the very first book, which means I have to put my tea down, which is very sad because it is very good tea. Coming in at number 10 is going to be Frankenstein by Shelley. Are you shocked? Because let me tell you, I'm a little shocked. For those of you who didn't know, I've actually been putting Frankenstein on my TBR for years. I'm gonna say this is maybe the third year that this book has been on my spooky October TBR. And every single year, I am so intimidated by this book. And last year, I actually tried starting the book and I was convinced that I was going to hate the book and then DNF the book. But this year, I was like, no, this is the year me and Frankie, we finally get together. This book is about Dr. Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein, he gets a little cocky and he decides that he wants to create something. Does he go to his Pinterest board for some inspiration? Maybe try painting, maybe picking up crochet? Nay. He decides to create a man. So, this is actually one of the most complex and interesting stories I've ever read because in a lot of ways you're actually reading from the villain's perspective. And the villain, just a little bit of a spoiler, is not the creature that Dr. Frankenstein creates. It's Dr. Frankenstein himself, okay? He's a bit of a Can I say that on my channel? I don't know. And the story is told in a very interesting way. Watching all of the events unfold, you kind of see how the creature is being set up to be the villain, but the creature really just wants to experience humanity. Some of the most beautiful quotes I've read are in Frankenstein, all about how beautiful life is and how sweet and tender love and relationships are, and how as humans, we just have this fundamental longing to want to belong and to want to love and be loved in return. And it's beautiful and really heartbreaking and very well crafted. Shelley is insanely talented. I loved it. I'm so glad that I finally read it. If you are thinking of reading Frankenstein yourself, you have to make it past a certain amount of time because it is a little bit more dense and it is kind of harder to get into. But as soon as you get maybe 20% into the story, you're really gripped and you will fall in love with the language and with experiencing life from Frankenstein's perspective. This was such a surprise and I loved it so much. So coming in at number 9 is gonna be the very first cozy fantasy on the list, which is gonna be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and this is by Heather Fawcett. This is a cozy fantasy, it's adult, and it does have some romance elements, and this was such a delight. This is actually a book that I read with my Patreon members, and we collectively love it so much. This book is following Emily Wilde, and Emily Wilde, to no one's surprise, is here to create an encyclopedia of, you guessed it, fairies. So I liked this because Emily isn't necessarily like a traditional heroine. She's coming at learning about the Fae from a very academic standpoint, which I thought was really interesting and a really cool take. I particularly enjoyed her banter with her arch nemesis, whose name was Wendell. I love Wendell's perspective as well because Wendell does not think that they are enemies. He thinks that they are besties. And that was really fun to read about. I loved the narration of this. I loved the tone of this. I love the style of this. I just enjoyed it. Like, I thought it was cozy. I thought it was cute. I thought it was really funny. But also, I just liked how fresh and unique it felt. Coming in at number 8 is gonna be Shauna Maguire's newest in her novella series, Lost in the Moment and Found. I don't think I've ever made a top 10 list without mentioning one of Shauna Maguire's latest novellas. And I loved this so much. We're following Ancy, and Ancy ends up running away from her home. Things are not the best in her home life, and she decides to just kind of run away. And she finds herself at this shop for lost and found things, where everything lost ends up. And I was just so fascinated by the concept and by the shop. And then you learn that the shop also has a portal where you can go to different worlds, and I was immediately hooked. I thought this was so interesting. It also had so many really, really wonderful points and like commentary about things that made me very emotional. Shauna Maguire is so good at weaving in really important messages in a very delicate way in her fantasy worlds. I've loved every single book in the series. I love this one as well. I could not recommend picking up the series more. I thought it was amazing. Book number 7 on this list happens to be one of the best romances I've ever read, and that is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This book was, it was everything, okay? It was pretty much everything. This book is following 2 authors, Eva and Shane, who end up meeting in New York City, I think for a conference. And while they are there, there's a lot of tension between them because these 2 have unfinished business, if you catch my drift. Essentially, they met when they were young and they had a very tumultuous and exciting, passionate love affair. And then they both became authors, and they both ended up writing love letters to the other one in the form of books throughout all the years. So Shane has been writing Eva into all of his stories, and she's sort of been doing that for her stories about Shane as well. And then they finally meet and it all kind of comes together. I don't know, do they get together? You'll have to read it to find out. If you want something funny, this was funny. If you want something steamy, something romantic, something heartbreaking, there's quite a few really hard themes in here and really tough topics to read about in here, but it was handled so well. It's a romance, but it's also just this beautiful contemporary love story. It's stunning, okay? I loved it. My 6th best book of the year was Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake, which is an adult, it's not a romance. It's like a love story, contemporary thing. This book fully shattered my heart. It's a love story about 2 people who end up meeting one day, I want to say like at a museum. They decide to just have conversations with each other and sort of like study each other, but not actually go out on a date. And then I mean, like, listen, things happen. They fall in love. The book itself is kind of delving into some really serious topics. We discuss mental health, anxiety, depression. It's not always a positive love. Sometimes like there's a lot of toxicity in this book, but I thought it really worked for me. I thought it was really beautiful. I thought it was this really gorgeous depiction of love. It felt very honest to me. If you are looking for a book that really has beautiful, lush writing about love, and you don't really mind tonally reading a sad book, I thought this was really good. The next book is a little bit more of like a lighthearted read, which I think you need, especially if some of your favorite books are gonna fully shatter your heart. You need a good laugh. And if you want a good laugh, I highly recommend Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. This is an adult contemporary read. The book is following 3 different perspectives, and they are all sisters that come from this upper crust family in New York City. 2 of them are biological sisters. One is younger and she's sort of trying to date and fell in love for the first time, and then the other one is married and she has some financial problems that are arising in her life. And then the third perspective is from a woman who has married into the family, and so she is the sister-in-law. And we're kind of seeing how all of these women navigate their life and how they grow and how their perspectives shift as they get older and they fall in love, they meet new people, they experience new things for the first time. I really enjoyed it. I thought that some of the commentary in here was really, really smart, but also the voices felt so distinct. I think sometimes when you have multiple narrators, it can be really hard as a writer, I'm sure, to make each character feel completely distinct from the other characters. But Jenny Jackson just like freaking killed it, because every single woman in this story felt like her own person, and I was really invested equally in every single story. I also felt like the character arcs and development were so well done in this book as well. I just really like this. I thought it was really, really fun. I thought it was really smart, well written, and really, really funny. Coming in at spot number 4 are going to be 2 romance cozy fantasies. One's a little spicier than the other, but they are That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming and Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I know that you're not supposed to tie books. I know that that's kind of cheating, but it's fine. So Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is sort of like a fade to black romance. So if you love romances, but you maybe aren't as interested in spicy scenes, you can pick this one up. This is following Theodora Eddings, who has been cursed to only have half of her soul by a fairy. The story takes place kind of like in a fake Victorian England world where I think it's like our world, but there's magic involved. And she and her cousin go into, I wanna say London, high society, so that her cousin can start to officially court and potentially like find a suitable match. And while there, Theodora meets Elias, or Elias, I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name, but anyway, she meets him. She asks him if he will help her to like unbreak this curse where she only has half of her soul. And listen, okay, they fall in love. It's an enemies to lovers. The banter is amazing. I love the voice of our main girl, Theodora. I think it's incredible. But also this was so romantic. I felt like the imagery in this was beautiful. I thought it was romantic. I thought it was sweet. And again, I really enjoyed the commentary. Like I feel like this had a lot of really beautiful quotes and really smart themes that I just was not expecting to pick up and read about in a soft fantasy romance, cozy fantasy thing. Whatever. If you're looking for a book to take you out of your own world and head for a while, I really highly recommend this. It was just very well written and I loved it. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, yeah, Lexi, all that sounds great, but I actually really enjoy some steam. I really enjoy some smut. Might I point you to the book that this is tied with by Kimberly Lemming, which is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. Oh my God. You guys, you don't even know. You don't even know. We're following Cinnamon, and Cinnamon is a spice farmer, and she is not interested in the adventure, okay? She does not want any of that stuff. She wants a cozy little life, farming, having a family, hanging out with her siblings. Honestly, she's my kind of girl because like, same. And so she really takes the stance of like the Legends and Lattes thing. Like, I don't want all of that swordplay. I just want a man. The difference, however, is that she does not get the cozy lifestyle. She is thrown into an adventure when she accidentally saves a demon when she's drunk. I really struggle with how much to say because I don't want to say anything that someone might deem is a spoiler, but they basically go off on an adventure together and they do end up falling in love. The banter between the two of them is incredible. I don't really want to give away too much stuff, but he's not really like a demon. He's a dragon. So like, it's really hot. Also, probably the funniest book I've ever read in my life. Coming in at number 3 is another cozy fantasy. I think this might be the last cozy fantasy on this list. Cozy fantasy, really, in 2023, it was a winner. This one is called Tress of the Emerald Sea, and this is by Brandon Sanderson. Tress of the Emerald Sea is a cozy fantasy, and I really enjoyed this. Brandon Sanderson, I believe, I don't remember where I saw this, maybe in the book, maybe in an interview, but Brandon Sanderson said that he was actually a little bit inspired by The Princess Bride. And so if you like the vibes of the princess vibe, I do actually feel like they are very similar tonally. This is a book that I think is really lighthearted, really funny, has a really fantastic narrator, and the story itself kind of almost feels like you're being told a bedtime story, which I really enjoyed a lot. We're following Tress, and Tress is in love with, I think, the Duke's son named Charlie. Now, Tress is just like an average person. Technically, Charlie is too. Charlie is apparently like really boring in real life, but Tress loves talking to Charlie, and they end up kind of like becoming friends. And then one day Tress realizes that she loves him. She is in love with Charlie, and she loves his boring stories. She loves talking to him. She just wants like a normal, happy little life with Charlie. It's really beautiful. It's like very endearing. However, the Duke, Charlie's dad, sees Tress almost as like a threat because she's nothing special in his eyes. Like, she isn't necessarily coming from money or anything like that. She's just like an average, his words not mine, okay? I think Tress is pretty spectacular, but in his mind, Tress is kind of just like an average person. And so he sends his son off to all of these different kingdoms where there might be suitable women for Charlie to marry. And Tress is completely heartbroken, but then Charlie tells her before he leaves, like, actually, Tress, like, I'm in love with you, so I will make sure that no girl wants to marry me. They will all reject me. And that way my dad doesn't get mad at me, and then I can end up with you. And then he gets kidnapped. And Tress decides, you know what? I'm gonna save my man. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's hilarious. It's quirky in some areas. It's very whimsical in other areas. And you just root for Tress so much. Okay, we are about to go into my top 2 of the year. I cannot believe it. Here we go. So coming in at number 2 is going to be an adult epic fantasy, and that is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, and this is by Shannon Chakraborty. This was so good. This was so good. The book is following Amina Al-Sarafi, who is a retired adventurer and pirate, essentially, and she is a mom. She loves hanging out with her daughter. And then one day, there's a person who comes in and says, listen, my granddaughter was kidnapped. I'm gonna give you a lot of money. You gotta go find her. Amina kind of like rejects this. She's like, listen, I feel for you, okay? Like, I really, really feel for you. I hope you get your granddaughter. I'm retired. I'm a full-time mom, you know? And I'm like enjoying my retirement. This lady, she offers Amina like a huge sum of money that would be really, really hard for her to turn away from. And then she also says, by the way, the granddaughter is technically the daughter of one of your past shipmates. And so she decides that she's going to do it, but she wants to get the band back together, if you will. I love stories with this. I love it when like Six of Crows or like Ocean's 11, or even, what's that one, like the Red series, the one about like the retired spy people. I love it when people are like getting back together their crew because they have to go on like an impossible heist or an impossible mission for like a second time or something. Amazing, amazing. The vibes are 10 out of 10. And so what happens is she gets her crew together and they go out looking for this granddaughter. The reason this book really worked for me is because it was very reminiscent of one of my very favorite books that I was read as a kid, or yeah, my mom read it to me as a kid, and that is 1001 Arabian Nights. And I have like a lot of nostalgia and like sentimental attachment, I think, to that story. And this really reminded me of that story because each chapter felt almost like a mini tale. It was very episodic because it felt sort of like you were watching Amina have a new adventure every single time, sort of like a Netflix series. Every chapter was on a cliffhanger and there was like always a new thing that was going on. There was always a new character that was being introduced. And it was just a really, really great time. I thought it was fast paced. I thought it was well crafted. I thought the story was wonderful. I will say this is not what I would consider a cozy fantasy. It's scary. In a lot of places, it's kind of graphic and bloody and gory. It had some hard parts like that I really did not want to read and that I had to kind of get through, but it also had like a cheeky little romance in here. There was a lot of magic in here. There was a lot of intrigue in here, and the story was fantastic. It was very well crafted. If you liked 1001 Arabian Nights, or if you like the vibes of that, I think you should check this out. Loved it so much, particularly loved it because it reminded me a lot of my childhood and of my mom. One of the best fantasies I have ever had the pleasure of reading in my entire life. Ladies and gentlemen, we are officially at my #1 spot of the year, and I'm very excited to share the title. But before we do, let me briefly just share with you 3 titles that almost made this list. The first is The Shining by Stephen King. This is horror, I think, at its finest. It's about a little boy who sees a lot of scary stuff in a hotel, okay? And it was a wild, wild ride. I was absolutely terrified while reading this, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was so good. The next one is a YA fantasy. Absolutely so well crafted. It's called Six Crimson Crames by Elizabeth Lim. This is another book that I read with my Patreon members. If you want a fantasy series that is gonna suck you in and has incredible writing, this is the one, my friends. And then the final book that almost made the cut but just didn't quite make the top 10 list is Grady Hendrix's How to Sell a Haunted House. I loved the sibling dynamic in here. I love the commentary on sibling love. I even love the creepy puppets, okay? I did. I grew up on the Muppets, sue me. And finally, my #1 best book of the year, which totally took me by surprise, ended up being The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. What is there to say except that it was everything? So I don't know if you've ever seen the one and only Practical Magic. But if you haven't, highly recommend watching the movie. It's one of my very favorite movies of all time. It feels very cozy, very whimsical. Well, this book is written by the author who wrote Practical Magic. Now, I have not read Practical Magic, but I've been told by a lot of people that it's actually the weakest book that Alice Hoffman has written in this series. She's written a series, and you can technically read the books out of order, I believe, and it's following the members of a family called the Owens family, and all of the children are blessed with magic. So they have the ability to cast spells and potions, and they all have like little powers and things like that. And depending on who you are in the family, you might have stronger abilities than somebody else, but you all technically have some sort of magic. However, all of the members of this family are cursed in love. And honestly, aren't we all? Aren't we all? But they are cursed in love that whoever they love is going to eventually die. And it all started with their great-great-great-great-grandmother, who has her own book. I think it's called Magic Lessons. This book is following 3 siblings, and they all end up having different love stories. The way Alice Hoffman writes is unlike any other writer. The quotes in here were so touching and so emotional. The writing was lush without necessarily being over the top. And there were so many quotes in here that just made me want to believe in love. And it was just really, really well crafted. It felt whimsical, but it didn't feel lighthearted. It's a very heavy book, and there's a lot of sadness in here, and it's also slower paced. So don't necessarily go into this if you're looking for a fast-paced book, a book that's gonna grip your attention the whole time. Pick this book up if you just want to read a beautifully well-crafted story about people falling in love. And that's it for the top 10 best books I've read of the year. That's it though, you guys. Those are all of my favorite books of 2023. Now that we're at the very end of the video though, I would love to know from you what books were in your top 10 of the year. You can tell me your whole list of top 10. You can tell me your favorite book of the year. You can tell me one of your favorite books of the year, but I would love to know from you, especially if you think I should check out a book, or if I recommended a book and you picked it up because of me. And if you've made it to this point of the video, please leave me, what's like a hopeful emoji? Let's try to do something hopeful for 2024. Leave me like that star emoji, because I feel like that's filled with hope, right? Thank you so much for watching this video. I love all of you so much, and a huge thank you especially to all of my Patreon members over at Fox and Wood, especially the Ink and Quill Club. All of your names are down below in my description. Thank you, as always, for your support. I love you guys so much. And I think that's it. So until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will chat with you very soon. Bye!